Good evening. Hello and welcome to this Monday's edition of India Development Debate. I'm Nayantara Rai in New Delhi. Modiji ki Sena, chaukidar chor hai, khaki underwear, badla, sabak sikhana. That's what our politicians' election speeches are centering around these days. Issues that may matter to you and me are not the focal point, whether it's jobs, inflation, kisan welfare, healthcare, education, environment, women's safety. The 2019 Lok Sabha elections has become a tennis match of hate speech, violating the model code of conduct with impunity. As a flicker of hope, the Election Commission today banned Uttar Pradesh's Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and BSP Supremo Mayawati for 3 and 2 days respectively. That's from holding any political activity. But that's only after the Supreme Court bench, headed by the Chief Justice of India, questioned the powers of the Election Commission in an explosive hearing and even threatened to summon the Chief Commissioner in 30 minutes if suitable answers were not provided. This was over a PIL filed by a NRI on hate speeches, and that hearing will continue on Tuesday. Also today, the Supreme Court heard BJP's Meenakshi Lekhi's contempt plea against the Congress President Rahul Gandhi for misquoting the top court of the land in the Rafale case and misquoting the verdict, saying the bench agreed, chaukidar chor hai. The questions we're raising today: why has the political discourse in Battle 2019 stooped to this level? What is the Election Commission doing? Is the Election Commission indeed a toothless tiger? Why are politicians not scared of any repercussions? That and a lot more coming up on this Monday's edition of the India Development Debate.
मैंने कांग्रेस के नेताओं से कहा कि भैया तुम लोगों को अली मुबारक हो, हमारे लिए बजरंग बली हमारे साथ में है।
मोदी जी की सेना आतंकवादियों को गोली और गोला देती।
मैं इनको ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि हमारे अली भी हैं और बजरंग बली भी हैं।
ये इलेक्शन जो मैं पार कर चुकी हूँ, अब आपको मेरी जरूरत पड़ेगी। अगर मेरी जीत मुसलमानों के बिना होगी तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा नहीं लगेगा, क्योंकि इतना मैं बता देती हूँ कि फिर दिल खट्टा हो जाता है।
मैं 17 दिन में पहचान गया कि इनके नीचे का जो अंडरवेयर है वो खाकी रंग का है।
Okay, so I will be discussing that with my panelists: Hitesh Jain, the spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party; Mohammad Khan, the spokesperson for the Congress Party; Dr. Subhash Kashyap, former Secretary of the General Lok Sabha and a constitutional expert; Jawahar Sircar, the former Secretary of the Ministry of Culture, Government of India; the former CEO of the Prasar Bharati, and one of the 66 signatories of a letter written to the President recently over the behavior of the Election Commission. Dr. Subhash Kashyap, let me come to you first. You're the authority on the Constitution. Today, we did see an explosive hearing in the Supreme Court where the Chief Justice of India himself questioned the powers of the Election Commission, questioned why nothing was being done about hate speeches, questioned that when replies were being sought by politicians and they were missing the deadlines, why nothing was being done. Can you set the landscape for us? Is the Election Commission indeed as toothless as is being believed to be?
Well, under Article 324 of the Constitution, the Election Commission has powers of superintendence, direction and control for the conduct of free and fair elections for the 2 houses of parliament and for state legislatures and for president and vice president. The powers have to be found in the constitutional provisions or in laws regarding conduct of elections passed by Parliament under Article 327 or by state legislatures under Article 328. The Election Commission has only those powers which are mentioned in the Constitution or in the provisions of law. Now, there is some dispute and some grey area in regard to how wide the powers under superintendent's direction and in control can be accepted. According to one of the Supreme Court's own rulings, the powers have to be found in the constitutional provisions or in laws. That is, it is for Parliament or state legislatures to legislate in regard to election matters, except in areas which are mentioned in the Constitution or RPA, Representation of People Act, or other laws.
Okay, so with the ball has to be in the Parliament's court is what you're telling us, Dr. Kashyap. I'm going to come back to you. But, you know, if I could also now go, and we will be soon joined by a former Chief Election Commissioner, S.Y. Qureshi, as well. He's joining us quite soon. But if I could come across to you now, Mr. Sarkar, you know, you have written about the Election Commission's behavior. And we can take up several examples, but let's take up one that you took against the Governor Kalyan Singh, where you found that the Election Commission could do nothing except that it wrote to the President. And after that, we are still awaiting action. You have, you know, come out with several instances along with the other signatories of this letter. Do you actually believe that the behavior of the Election Commission has been because it is toothless or because it chose not to act on those situations? What is your understanding?
No, the group that I represent, and as a former state chief electoral officer, we are convinced that the Election Commission already has several powers with it. I'll mention one. Section 125 of the Representation of the People Act confers on the Election Commission the power to send people to jail for 3 years for making, for dividing people between people, for provoking enmity between different classes on the grounds of religion, on the grounds of caste. We do not have a single instance. I'm not referring only to the present commission. The present commission has more responsibilities than any other commission in the past, because never before have we seen such a hated and such a low class of debate. So there are sufficient powers. I have only mentioned section 125 of the Representation of the People Act, and I have mentioned that it has the powers to send people who violate the act to jail for 3 years. With such powers, just using a feather to, let us say, prohibit a political person from making campaigns for 2 to 3 days may not be sufficiently demonstrative of the intentions of the Commission. I am convinced that the Commission has enough powers to stop it. But there are other sections, we will come to it as we get along.
Sure, and I will come back to discuss those other sections. But the other big question is that why is it that our politicians indulging in this? Do they really believe that this is what the electorate wants? If 2014 was about hope, a new India, about jobs, development, economy, why is it that that's not center stage today? And I'm going to bring up an analysis that was carried out by India Spend, and it's been published. And maybe this holds a part of the answer, where India Spend has done an analysis and found out that hate speech accused are 3 times more successful in elections. Hitesh Jain, you might want to hear this. I'm coming to you next. They've come out with this analysis where they have shown that victory chances improve with hate speeches. They've done an analysis then after that where they say candidates with hate speech cases registered, candidates that are contesting are as many as 399. 121 have been victorious. It's a 30% boost to victory chances. What are they considering to be part of this when they talk about hate speech cases registered? It's under the section IPC 154A, 154B, and many other that have been named. After that, they go on to say that the MPs and MLAs with the hate speech cases, Bharatiya Janata Party is the biggest offender. 28 with the BJP, followed by 9 under the Telangana Rashtriya Samiti. Incidentally, because we have representatives of the Congress party, they said 3 have been attributed to the Congress. Is this why, Hitesh Jain, that your party has been found to be a big offender of divisive speeches, hate speeches, what we are actually seeing on ground, where your star campaigner, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, has been pulled up and temporarily banned as well? Is this your strategy? It actually works during elections?
नयनतारा, चाय वाला, नीच, चौकीदार चोर है, and khaki underwear. This is not the language of Bharatiya Janata Party. We have not used the language and lowered the discourse. What has happened is, since 2014, when Mr. Modi's Prime Minister candidature was announced, and when the Congress Party was sensing that he was going to come back to power, they started attacking him. They used every choicest possible word to attack Mr. Modi. I mean, imagine the discourse, I mean, the kind of language which Rahul Gandhi uses, like Chaukidar Chor hai, and not only he uses such kind of language, he misrepresents and exaggerates to the people that the Supreme Court has said this kind of language, and he encourages and provokes people to shout this kind of a slogan. At least Bharatiya Janata Party has not indulged into such kind of languages. Yes, there have been certain aberrations on our side, I do not deny that, but the fact is that the discourse has been lowered in last 5 years because Bharatiya Janata Party has been in power. We were also in opposition. We have lost elections. From 2004 to 2014 we were in opposition. Before that also we were in, in 90s and 80s and 70s we were in the opposition. You will see the kind of speeches of Mr. Vajpayee. You will see the kind of speeches made by the leaders of Bharatiya Janata Party from 2004 to 2014. We have never used such kind of languages. So we do not support hate speech. We do not use such kind of languages. And if the kind of languages we are seeing that, and when you see such kind of languages being used, nobody prevents the leader when he speaks about the khaki chaddi. It's like the leaders, I mean the party leaders of Samajwadi parties were gloating and the crowd was also cheering. So at the end of the day, leaders also come from the people, and if crowds are also cheering, then it's a certainly, I mean, I'm looking at poll, no poll, panel, no panel, the kind of discourse that is being used. Also,
Next,
I want to make one more point.
Hitesh, I have to object to that. I have to object to that, but simply because that is also lowering the discourse, simply because saying that tomorrow people are cheering when there is lynching or something like that, it's okay to do it. So let's not get into that. I'm going to bring Mohammed Khan into the conversation now. Look at what Hitesh Jain has had to say. And he's brought up instances where your party is equally guilty and an offender of lowering the discourse. Your party president has misquoted a Supreme Court verdict. The contempt notice has been issued. We're talking about the Election Commission being toothless. Your party president is not even afraid of misquoting the Supreme Court verdict. How do you respond to that?
Of course, I'll respond to that. But before that, I want to respond to Hitesh Jain. Every single thing that Hitesh Jain said is incorrect.
No, please first respond to that. You respond to that, and then I will let you counter, Hitesh. But please respond to this first.
Thank you. Okay, I'll respond to your question first, but do allow me to respond to Hitesh Jain Saab. Now, the first point is, the language of politics and the language of law are very different. And Nayantara, I am so glad that this issue was raised before the Supreme Court, because we love the idea of being allowed to go and issue our clarification before the Honorable Bench. We love the idea of again bringing this issue to the fore, and we are very glad that a very thin-skinned BJP ran to the Supreme Court complaining against us. Very good. Now, Rahul ji, when he made that statement, and I think we've had a debate on ET now on this issue as well, if you watch the clip in its entirety, Rahul ji himself clarifies. He says that after the judgment of the Supreme Court, ye spasht ho gaya hai, ye saaf ho gaya hai ki chaukidar chor hai. What he means to say is not that citizens will believe that the judgment says chaukidar chor hai. No. Anyone with common sense would not interpret that. Unfortunately, the BJP seems to lack it, but Rahul ji knows that the people who are listening to this will not say that, acha, literally iska yahi matlab hai. He knows that it is part of a larger narrative that we've built up over 2 years. We've provided 31 pieces of evidence. Every time we have caught them lying. That is why they lie to you and say the matter is closed, but it's reopened in review when it turns out that there are documents that are suppressed. So, in conclusion, when Rahul ji says, ab sabit ho gaya, chaukidar chor hai, it means that their feeble defense has fallen to the ground, that Official Secrets Act applies to journalists, that these documents are secret and cannot be shown, and therefore it again proves our claim that that theft of public money has occurred. And this is the clarification we'll present to the Supreme Court. Ultimately, what the Supreme Court decides, we'll be bound by. Now, I want to answer Hitesh Jain ji. Hitesh Jain ji says, my party has never done anything, my party is blameless. Sir, your party is the reason communal politics thrives in our country. Let me educate you on 2 or 3 points. As Nayantara pointed out, 28 incidents over the recent past attributed to you, 3 to us. You know the difference? We take action against those people. We condemn those people. People like me and people like our leaders come on these channels and condemn those people. You make excuses for them. Number 2, sir, hybrid bachda, Jersey cow. Do you know who used these words? The country's Prime Minister used these words. Do you know the words Amit Shah used? Do you know the language your people use in Parliament? And you sit here and you act sanctimonious. Sir, let me tell you another thing in conclusion. Every single time you've made a hate speech, we've gone to the Election Commission. This order of the Election Commission is a direct result of us approaching the Election Commission on the 12th of this month, where we suggested this tier system of punishment. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And we're very glad that the Election Commission has accepted it. Sir, if you had any objection to what we say, why don't you go to the Election Commission? It's because there are no examples. I can tell you honestly, Hitesh Jain ji, there is a zero tolerance in my party when it comes to making such poisonous statements. We don't use it to advance our political careers because we believe our message on point will win us the day. It is unfortunate, and I conclude on this note, that you began in 2014 on the beautiful overtones of अच्छे दिन and good governance, और 5 साल बाद आते आते वही जहर और विष की राजनीति, और आखिर में आप छिपे आके तो आर्म्ड फोर्सेस के पीछे, both of which are illegal.
I'll give Hitesh.
Rewarded him with the MP.
I will give Hitesh. 1 second. Hitesh Jain, I will allow you to counter, and when you do that, you know, let's also just remember that both sides are guilty. We're not taking sides here. But since I brought up the Congress president, let me now bring up the BJP president, Amit Shah. Back in 2014, he had also been temporarily banned. He apologized. That had to do with Muzaffarnagar. This time, he's talking about NRC in Assam, which is now coming up for questioning as well. So, you know, while both sides are guilty and both presidents have, you know, one has misquoted a Supreme Court verdict, the other one has said certain comments that have not gone down well with the Election Commission and is being looked into. Both sides have done that. Now I will let you, I wanted to establish that, and now I will let you counter Mohammed Khan.
Well, I want to only remind Mr. Mohammed Khan that if they say zero tolerance, then all those people who have spoken against Mr. Modi and used the kind of language of chai wala, neech, प्राइम मिनिस्टर की बोटी बोटी कर देंगे, उंगली काट देंगे, उनकी मुंडी काट देंगे, they have been rewarded in the parliamentary elections. They have been given a ticket to contest the parliamentary election. This is the zero tolerance of the Congress regime. Basically, the idea is the rut starts from the top and it ends at the bottom, and they have been encouraged that they have to only make show, I mean, they have to only shout slogans because they cannot debate with us on the issues. Therefore, the languages of hate speech come. I mean, there are so many issues. You argue the issue of development, you argue on the issue of infrastructure, you argue on the infrastructure, on the foreign policy, you argue on the issues of national security, but we will not argue. We will only change the discourse for anything. Rahul Gandhi has been basically been fed. You have to just like a parrot one language that chaukidar chor hai. You ask about development, he says chaukidar chor hai. He goes to a speech, some women are sitting, tumhare khise ka paisa. I mean, the kind of statement he is doing, no wonder when a party president is making such kind of a statement, the other party workers get a license to make such a kind of hate speeches.
Okay. Now let me go on to the other two gentlemen. We've done a little bit of politicking with the BJP as well as the Congress. Dr. Kashyap, if I can now come to you. Once again, that explosive hearing where the Chief Justice of India said if suitable answers are not provided, he would even summon the Chief Election Commissioner within 30 minutes. Having said that, he raised some very pertinent questions where I will now be quoting the observation where he questions the Election Commission's counsel and says, so you're basically saying you, the Election Commission, are toothless and powerless against hate speeches. The most you can do is send a notice to the offending candidate. If the candidate replies, send him or her an advisory. Despite this, if there is violation of the Model Code of Conduct, you may then file a criminal complaint. That's all. Those are your powers under the law. That's what Chief Justice Gogoi had asked Mr. Sharma, the counsel for the Election Commission, today. Dr. Kashyap, tell us, is this actually what the situation is? Is this actually all the powers that are vested by the Constitution of India, by the People's Representative Act that we have in India on the Election Commission? Is this what it is?
You are quite right. That is the Election Commission's reading of its powers. There are certain matters regarding which I have been of the view that the Election Commission needs to be given more powers in matters like disqualifying candidates, derecognition of parties, deregistration of parties. Right now there are about 2,500 parties registered, and even the Supreme Court has agreed with the proposition that the Election Commission has the power to register but no power to deregister parties. I think the Election Commission needs to be given more powers in the matter of disqualification of candidates for violation of the Model Code of Conduct. The Model Code of Conduct needs to be enforced very strongly and in all immaculate details, and the power of recognition should include the power of derecognition, and registration should include the power of deregistration. And what the limits of the powers are, that will ultimately be laid down by the Supreme Court, I hope soon enough.
Okay, you know, there is news coming in that the Election Commission has decided to take action against Azam Khan. We've seen the kind of comments that he has made in Rampur and how Jai Prada has also responded to that. In Rampur, time and again during election season, we do see these kind of comments that are made. So the question also needs to be asked, do politicians feel that this is what's going to work with the electorate? So Azam Khan has been banned in a ruling that has come out by the Election Commission right now, with the Election Commission also directing all parties to not make derogatory statements against women. He's been banned, I would like to point out, for 72 hours. He's not been banned for the life of the campaign. So, Mr. Sarkar, you know, one would have to imagine with the kind of pressure that is under that the Election Commission is under. It has 66 former bureaucrats where you are part of the signatories writing to the President. The Supreme Court of India is looking into this, threatening that the Chief Commissioner would be summoned within 30 minutes. So I would have to imagine that with all of this kind of pressure on the Election Commission, this is the best it can do. Have I got that right?
No, I don't think you are right. I fully appreciate what Dr. Kashyap has said, that more teeth would perhaps help the Election Commission. But we have at the same time dozens and dozens of sections of the Act that are simply not being used. I'll give you one example. Section 126 of the RP Act makes it mandatory to stop all propaganda, political propaganda, for 48 hours during the conduct of a poll, wherever the poll is being held. We have already had phase 1 of the poll, and during these 48 hours, while political parties refrain from campaigning, Modi's TV, or whatever its name, it's called Namo TV. Namo TV went on blaring, telecasting political speeches. The question I ask is that it's a direct infringement of Section 126 and the 48-hour ban. The power rests with the Election Commission. Did it do anything then or thereafter? There is always a chance that some citizen or some candidate may go to court and say that it was flagrantly violated. Flagrantly violated. And it's not that the Election Commission was not aware of Namo TV. We have been raising this issue. There are many other groups and associations that have raised the issue. So what I'm pointing out is that the Election Commission has sufficient powers as it is. More powers would always be welcome, and it needs to make judicious use of these powers. We have all conducted elections, 66, almost every one among the 66 have conducted elections. Many of us have been state chief electoral officers. Many of us have worked very closely with the Election Commission. We know what the pressures are. We fully sympathize, but that is the call of duty. When you rise above these pressures and use your legal powers for the betterment of free and fair polls. My submission is that the Commission may kindly be given more powers, but at the same time, the Commission needs to look back at the powers. I've only mentioned 2 sections so far. I mentioned section 125 and now I'm mentioning section 126. It has powers under section 123(3)(a). There is 153(a) of the Indian Penal Code.
But I want to ask you, Mr. Sarkar, it can act. Mr. Sarkar, while it can act, can you educate our viewers? You have said that all of you have conducted elections at the center as well as the state. We also, the 2 representatives that we have today from the BJP in Congress are also well-known lawyers. So we're going to go to them with that point as well. What is it that it can do? Can it ban the campaigning? Can it take the? Can it cancel the nomination? What is it that it can do? While it is empowered to take action, what is it that it can do? It can find wrongdoing, but after that, what?
The quantum of punishment is completely in the judicious hands of the Election Commission. I have mentioned only the maximum. I have said that if you violate section 125, you can be sent to jail for 3 years. Send a person to jail for 1 day. That's demonstrative, section 125. Whereas section 126 is concerned, the process of election remains vitiated because of the flagrant violation of the ban period by a political channel. So there are examples. They need to wake up. They need more energy. They need to be more energetic about the use of their powers. That's all we are saying. They're all our colleagues. We sympathize with them. But they need to rise to the occasion. That's all.
Okay. Okay, that's a very valid point that you're making, that they have the power to send an offender to jail for up to 3 years. Dr. Kashyap, come in there, then I have to take a commercial break. Is it as simplistic as Mr. Sarkar is saying? The realities of our judiciary is, and this is a quasi-judicial body, that by the time you will be done with everything, perhaps elections will be over. Don't know how long it's going to take. So can this actually be implemented, the suggestion that Mr. Sarkar is making, that if you want to demonstrate and if you want to send a message, send an offender to jail for at least 1 day?
Well, it is not as simple as you rightly pointed out. It is not as simple. The Election Commission can function as a quasi-judicial authority in a very limited area. For sending a person to jail, the first thing that has to be done is he has to give in an opportunity for justifying what he has done, and there have to be hearings and full opportunity has to be given. He will have a right to be represented by an advocate, and only then the Election Commission can exercise powers like sending somebody to jail. And Election Commission's own reading, as I said earlier, is that in such a case they take the safer side of filing a report with the police and let the law take its own course.
Okay, with that, we'll take a short commercial break. This much is clear that maybe the Election Commission doesn't have the kind of teeth, the kind of powers it needs for today's realities. Using them will also be difficult, just given the judicial realities of the day. Having said that, we've seen the Election Commission today swing into action. Maneka Gandhi being banned for 48 hours, Azam Khan being banned for 72 hours. Before that, we saw action against Yogi Adityanath as well as BSP Supremo Mayawati. We're going to discuss this and a lot more after the short commercial break. Maybe we need another TN station. Do we need the parliament to get cracking? Or maybe it's going to be up to the courts once again. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching India Development Debate, where we're talking about why is it that our politicians have decided to go down the road of hate speeches, name calling, hate mongering, instead of talking about issues that actually matter to people like you and me: jobs, education, healthcare, environment, women's security. Is it actually a fact that hate mongering makes all of these candidates more successful? India Spend has come out with a study where it does allude that they have a higher chance of winning elections by indulging in this practice. Against the backdrop, we also have the Supreme Court of India actually questioning the powers of the Election Commission. An explosive hearing today led by the Chief Justice of India that's going to continue into tomorrow. At this juncture, I'd like to invite my new guest that's joining us here on India Development Debate. We are now being joined by Alok Prasanna Kumar from the Vidhi Legal. Thanks, Alok, for joining us. You know, you've written a column where your headline is "Free and Fair Polls, Election Commission ? Where you have made a case that maybe the Election Commission is not as powerful as it's made out to be. But then, lo and behold, you have found a verdict, or you have researched and you talk about a verdict, and I want everybody to hear about this, which dates back to 1977. It's a Mohinder Singh Gill versus the Chief Election Commissioner, and I'm going to quote an excerpt from that verdict. And I'm quoting it now: "But where empowering laws are absent and yet a situation has to be tackled, the Chief Election Commissioner has not to fold his hands and pray to God for divine inspiration to enable him to exercise his functions and to perform his duties, or to look to any external authority for the grant of powers to deal with the situation. He must lawfully exercise his power independently in all matters relating to the conduct of elections, and see that the election process is completed properly in a free and fair manner," unquote. That's a Supreme Court verdict going back to 1977. Alok, you know, you've researched this, you put this out in a recent paper. What exactly, what kind of powers does this mean the Election Commission has? I want to let you know that before you joined, Mr. Sarkar said they have enough powers under certain sections to make arrests up to 3 years, make a demonstration, arrest an offender for 1 day. To which Dr. Subhash Kashyap, who's a constitutional expert, said it's not as simplistic as that, looking at how our judiciary works. But now that you've researched and found, and you talk about this precedent, what exactly is it that the Election Commission can do or cannot do?
So I don't know if Mr. Subhash Kashyap mentioned this, but the source of the powers of the Election Commission are Article 324 of the Constitution, as I mentioned there. Article 324 of the Constitution gives the Election Commission the kind of power that no other authority in this country enjoys during elections. I mean, no state government and only maybe the central government during an emergency enjoys this kind of power. The only limitation is that this
sounds very good on paper. Alok, sounds very good on paper. Alok, sounds very good on paper. Sounds very good on paper. But you know what we've seen the Election Commission do is maybe, you know, ban candidates for 48 hours or 72 hours. And I think what our politicians have also shown is that they don't care about that. They don't care about the repercussions. I'll get into that just a bit. But now that there is this verdict, this precedent that we have from 1977, can it, for example, cancel a nomination? What is it that it can do? Can you explain that?
So let me explain it this way. At the end of the day, our constitution makers still want the people to decide their candidates. They don't want the Election Commission to be deciding the outcome of elections. If tomorrow you give the power of the Election Commission to cancel nomination, I can guarantee you that the ruling party will capture it. Whoever is the ruling party, it doesn't matter. They will capture the Election Commission to the point that you will cancel the nomination of everybody in the opposition for any and every reason. And we find it in hundreds of countries around the world. This is precisely the way that a free and fair election does not happen. That you have the power to cancel candidates' nominations. You have the power to disqualify someone even before a single vote is cast. That is the surest way to ensure that there is no free and fair elections. There was wisdom in what our constitution makers felt. They knew, look, we cannot tell you how to function. We can give you the powers. We can say on paper what you should do. At the end of the day, the law cannot account for somebody who does not want to do his or her job. That is really the issue. To me, that we haven't found a way to hold the election commission accountable. To their credit, criticism has gotten to them. The criticism made by the public that you're not acting within your powers. We have election commissioners in the past who have used just these powers to effectively police the elections. The point is, if you're not going to use even the powers that you have, what is the point of adding 10,000 more words, allowing you to do 100 different things? The point, the simple point that I've made in this article is, whatever the election commission needs to do, I mean, as long as it's within the boundary of the law, they can do. And I think this action that we have seen should have happened on day one. It shouldn't have had to wait for so much outrage, so much, send notice by this day, send notice by that day, ban and then say, I'll give you a post-decisional hearing. No court will say, no, please allow the consequences of hate speech to continue and while you give them a hearing. And it's unfortunate that the election commission does not seem to know the extent of its own powers. It's a bit like, Hanuman from the Ramayana, who had to be told, no, you're actually this powerful. No, you can actually capable of these things. So please do it.
Okay, fair point. Great point. So now let's go to the politicians. Hitesh Jain, I'll come to you. I've already asked you this. As per this study carried out by India's Pen, Bharatiya Janata Party looks to be the biggest offender, 28 such instances. We've all seen what's happened recently with Maneka Gandhi. In news coming in 30 minutes ago, she's now been banned for campaigning for 48 hours. And Alok has a very valid point. The Election Commission should not be deciding who gets to stand, not get to stand. That will lead to elections not being fair. It will be a blot on democracy. Now, having said that, then should we call a spade a spade? Your candidates in the constituencies they're standing in know the electorate, they know what's going to work, and they're indulging in that. They know the repercussions are not that large. They weighed their options, and that's that.
Well, frankly speaking, nowadays the tendency, be it Alok or Jawar Sirkar, they have this problem of exaggerating, misrepresenting or being economic with the truth. I'm making this a very candid statement. Now, Mr. Sirkar was talking about power under RP and saying that Election Commission has power. There is no such power. Election Commission has got no power to arrest and it cannot prosecute. So they cannot make such kind of false statements on the channel. He has been a bureaucrat and he should know the provision of the law. The power to punish is there. There is a legal power to punish, but that is after the entire trial. Election Commission does not exercises the power like the police officers have to arrest a person under the CRPC and investigate. There is a procedure, so people should not mislead. Now coming to the point which Alok has made. Now, this power under 324 has been considered by the Supreme Court in the 2018. He is quoting about 77. We have the judgment under 2018, which dealt with the power under 324 and what the Supreme Court held. And I want to quote because that is very important. And I am quoting for the benefit of the viewers. When Parliament or any state legislature has made valid law relating to or in connection with the election, the Commission shall act in conformity with, not in violation of such provision. The aforesaid decisions are to be oppositely appreciated. There is no denial of the fact that the Election Commission has the plenary power and its view has to be given a weightage. That apart, it has power to supervise the conduct of free and fair election. However, the said power has its limitation. The Election Commission has to act in conformity with the law made by the Parliament and it cannot transgress the same. So basically, when you look at the power under 324 also, the Supreme Court clearly said that when there is a law that is laid down, Election Commission has to follow the law. For example, nomination, rejection of the candidate, there are provisions under the Representative People Act. You have to follow that. You cannot say, oh, there is a hate speech. Okay, I am cancelling your nomination. That power, if Election Commission will exercise taking the guide of 324, it will be hit as arbitrary because Representation of People Act does not give. I agree that on a larger point, yes, we should have a debate. Okay. Yes, there should be a clarity about the powers under Article 324 of the Election Commission. But we also owe not to exaggerate, not to misrepresent, and understand the provisions from correct perspective.
There, at least, Mohammad Khan, will you agree with what Hitesh Jain of the BJP is saying? Is the Congress in agreement with that, that you can't have such overarching powers being given to the Election Commission, and also all of you must act responsibly, and ultimately the people who will have the final say? On this count, you'll agree with the
actually,
BJP?
I am partly in agreement with what Hitesh ji is saying. I'm not entirely in agreement with him, but I'm partly in agreement with Hitesh Jain ji, the lawyer, not the BJP spokesperson. He is right. And this proposition that he put forth has been circumscribed by the Supreme Court repeatedly. In we cited this judgment to the Election Commission recently, so I'm quoting it for you. S. Subramaniam Balaji versus State of Tamil Nadu. Hitesh ji, this is a judgment authored by Gogoi Saab himself, our current Chief Justice, in 2013. And our reading of this judgment suggested that, like what you said, where there is a law, of course the Election Commission has to be bound by the law. But if we take that one step ahead, where there is a vacuum in the law, and we cited this in the case of the Vivek Oberoi movie, where there is a vacuum in the law, then Article 324 is a reservoir of power to give it the creative authority to come up with solutions. This position is also enunciated in the two judgments that were of note over the last 5 years, Abhiram Singh in 2017 and Public Interest Foundation, which was pronounced in September of 2018, last year. The orbit of 324 has been defined differently by different judges, but I veer towards Prasanna's and Sir's interpretation more, because the Election Commission and previous election commissioners have used it in creative fashions to arrest what would become illegal situations or unlegislated situations. I'll give you just one example and I'll conclude. You will remember, Nayantara, 2 years ago, Amit Shah was being elevated to the Rajya Sabha and there was an election being held. Simultaneously, so was Mr. Ahmed Patel. Unfortunately, during the election, one of the legislators flipped, went to the other side. Now, there was no procedure at that point of time to rectify the process immediately and recalculate the votes. But the Election Commission, using Article 324, annulled that guy's vote and elevated Mr. Ahmed Patel to the Rajya Sabha. So the power has been used creatively and it exists to fill a vacuum. But otherwise, Hitesh ji is right to the extent where there is a law, it must be followed.
Never has a Rajya Sabha election been followed as closely as that one particular one was with Mr. Ahmed Patel, and I don't think, I think this is the first time I'm doing India Development Debate. I've got both the spokespeople of the BJP and the Congress on the same side on at least one issue. That's something that we should point out. But look, if I could also come to you, you know, like so much is being said about Namo TV. Then you've got that other website of, let's say, the Congress party, which has that conference, the press conference of Kapil Sibal. What is the Election Commission doing? We've had letters by Mr. Sirkar and other 65 ex-bureaucrats being written to the president questioning the behavior of the Election Commission. But isn't the problem also that these are all in a way discretionary in nature? Is that half the problem?
I don't think so, because when you give the power to the Election Commission, you're asking them to deal with a situation that literally nobody else in the world has to deal with. Let's be fair about this. No other country goes to polls in the way that India does. Not as many electors, not as diverse. And it creates problems of its own. And the constitution makers knew that we can't try and prescribe every single situation that might happen, every single thing which may go wrong. And even if they tried, that exercise would be never ending. So I completely agree that, discretion generally is a bad idea. But in this situation, you have to give that. See, the other constraint here is time. You can't stop an election process in the middle and say, wait, let us hold this hearing for 5 days and figure out what we should do next. You can't do that. So, which is why, given the time constraint, given the fact that, there is such a diverse and complex country in which you have to carry out this exercise, I think it's completely justified that this level of discretion is given. I would say that it's not as if discretion per se is bad. Discretion is needed in a situation like this. It is just that, people trust the Election Commission to exercise good sense. They are people with experience of having previously conducted elections. They have experience of being in the bureaucracy. They have experience of how the government functions. They, of all people, should know what it takes to keep Indian democracy going. They, of all people, should know what it takes to ensure free and fair elections. So I think it's not just about the scope of their powers. It is, I repeat it.
I want to come to you now.
They use it.
Dr. Kashyap, how they use it is, of course, the most important part, and you believe it's not discretionary in nature. I want to come to Dr. Kashyap now. Dr. Kashyap, with that verdict going back to 1977 of the Supreme Court against the Chief Election Commission, and you've heard what Alok has had to say. Now, this has been an election which has not just been about the kind of speeches that we've seen. We've also seen incidents, for example, a senior Congress leader and his close aides being raided by the Income Tax Department. Then cash also being found, running into like crores and crores. Shouldn't the election... Is the media, is the electorate also guilty talking more about these and other issues that really matter? For example, 5,000 crore rupees being recovered in 2 days. In 48 hours, you're recovering that kind of cash. Liquor, drugs. Aren't these problems more important? And aren't these what the Election Commission perhaps need more empowerment from in the spirit of law and in actual law?
As I submitted earlier, I believe that the Election Commission has to be given more powers, more discretion in matters regarding elections. While the independence of judiciary in our country is most important, I think independence and discretion of institutions like the Election Commission has also to be respected. And Election Commission has to work within the four walls of its own reading of the Constitution and the law as it is. While the matter can be taken to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court can pronounce on the validity of interpretation given by the Election Commission, and the verdict of the Supreme Court then has to be accepted by all the lower courts and by the country as the law of the land.
Right. Okay.
I would
Mr. Sarkar, if I could come to you.
More power.
Mr. Sarkar, if I could come to you. If you give more
power.
Mr. Sarkar, I'll come to you. You believe that while Dr. Kashyap is saying give more power, give more discretion to the Election Commission, you believe it already has enough power. It is not using it. But the flip side is, and you have been in the bureaucracy, and it does happen when you give power, it also leads to misuse. You may not want that in this case, especially.
That's a very common sense reply and a very correct reply. But before that, let me request Mr. Jain, or whatever his name is, to go back home and study Section 125 of the Act, which gives powers under the RP Act to send a person to jail up to 3 years. And the question is, I am not saying that the Election Commission will arrest him, the Election Commission will send him. I am saying the Representation of the People Act, that's incidentally the correct name, not the name that he has given. The Representation of the People Act has a provision for sending a person to jail. The question is, during election, the process of the powers lie completely with the Election Commission and Chief Election Officer of the states and down to the returning officers and other levels. We have all been part of it, so we know what we are talking about. What I am insisting upon is that the existing powers need to be used. You did not need to wait till the Supreme Court pulled you up on 3 to 4 politicians and their hate speeches. We, your fellow civil servants, had sent you a reminder so many days ago. The Election Commission needs to wake up to its existing powers and also requires, in certain cases, other additional powers. We are not, one is not precluding the other.
Okay.
The simple point we are raising is all these issues have been raised not only by us, but by others. The Election Commission needs to wake up. That's all.
Okay. And I think this is going to be a debate that is going to carry on all the way till the last phase of election. Counting, of course, is on May 23rd. Unfortunately, I'm completely out of time and my producer's prompting me. I have to wrap up this edition of the India Development Debate. Tomorrow is another crucial hearing at the Supreme Court. Many thanks for watching today. We'll be back tomorrow.